So it's more than just, let's take this hearing test results, let's put it in an over-counter device, and you're just going to work with it. The audiologist is piecing all together for you and your family to create an ability to not only hear better, but to give you the strategies, because this seems simple, but all of this gives so much information to help you.
Welcome to the Hearing Wellness Journey podcast, an exploration of determination, hope, self-discovery, and triumph. We'll share the personal experiences of those that are living with hearing loss and provide a haven for their stories to show others that they are not alone in this journey. Please welcome your hosts.
Welcome to today's episode of Hearing Wellness Journey podcast. I'm Lindsay Doherty.
I'm Dr. Emily Johnson.
I'm Dr. Dawn Hyman.
And today we're going to talk about what does your hearing test mean as you're at home and might have questions.
I feel like that's $1 million question of, yeah, they went through it during my appointment to get home. And then you look at it and you're like, ooh, I don't think I fully understand what this means.
Yeah, they're like, I heard everything that they presented to me, and I don't believe these test results. Or some people, they just don't understand, and they say, I think I heard them say I have 80% hearing in one ear and 20% in the other, something like that. And we don't go into percentages. So we're going to make it easier for you. And Dr. Franklin at Johns Hopkins University, about 2-3 years ago, came up with this hearing number that they were wondering if it would just be easier for people to be able to compare their hearing numbers. So we can talk about that too.
Sure. Absolutely. But we're still in that traditional world of labeling things in severity ranges. And I think it's important to remember that everything is a range, that there's a lower end of the range and a higher end of the range, just like your annual blood work. You want to be in those certain ranges. And so when you get home, you're going to have a sheet of paper or an email, something that looks like this. It should have a graph on it. If it doesn't have a graph, it might have a table of numbers. That's okay. We're going to go through what it means so it's a little bit less intimidating when you are looking at your results. So on the graph up here on the -10, we're looking at your hearing level in decibels. And that is how loud did the sound have to be before you raised your hand, pushed a button, whatever they had you do. So you go from super, super soft sounds to really, really loud sounds like a jet plane taking off. And then from left to right, we're going to look at frequency. So we're going really low, like ah, e, o, oo, all the way to those very, very high pitches and everything in between. Your red circles are going to be your right ear, and the blue X's are going to be your left ear. If you received a graph that is not color-coded, do not panic. When it's a circle, it's your right ear. When it's an X, it's your left ear. So if everything is grayscale or black and white, that's okay. X's and O's, it's standard. And over on the right here, you can see that there is a key. So if you're ever unsure, it's going to list on the key what those symbols mean. And it's okay to reference back to that if you forget.
Something that I tell people when they look at this graph, if you're going to dig a swimming pool in your backyard, you can have a shallow end and you have a deep end. And on this graph, if things are up towards the left, that's the shallow end. It's easy to stand in that water. It might even just be around your feet. There's no problem. But once you go into an area where they dug in deeper, in order to swim in that pool, you have to tread water and you have to work harder to keep your head above water. So that's why we're testing this scale, to allow us to know if you're struggling, why.
Absolutely. So our shallow end here in these low pitches, 250 hertz to about 1,000 hertz, is going to be that shallow end of the pool. That is our lower frequency range when we're talking about vowels and really low frequency, loud consonant sounds like duh, buh. Very low frequency. and pretty good volume to them. I always say this is the volume of speech of where you have access to people talking. When we get to those higher pitches, we start to dip into that mild to moderately severe hearing loss in those high pitches. This is going to be where the consonants and the clarity parts of speech are. So I lovingly refer to this type of hearing loss as everybody mumbles, because you have good volume of speech, but when it comes down to did they say fat, sat, or that, those are going to be the sounds that you don't have complete access to, especially in the presence of background noise, or if you're not directly facing the person. You're relying heavily on context clues and other parts of a sentence that you can pick up, and you're using a lot of other executive functions to fill in the gaps of what you're not taking in through your ears. And that's exhausting at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. What do they say? Speech redundancies. If you can pick up on what someone says because you missed it, because we all miss stuff all the time. Someone said it incorrectly, they had food in their mouth or something, but you know the topic. And then you heard the context of the sentence. Maybe you heard the word or the sound just before the sound that you're missing, but it was enough for you to have enough redundancies or other cues to allow you to get the big picture and to guess. But yeah, guessing over time is exhausting. As the noise gets louder or someone starts to walk away from you and their voice gets softer when they walk away and they're not facing you, or you can no longer see their lips because maybe you were using your eyes and your ears. It's what we call listening effort. The listening effort increases when you are using extra brain resources to figure out what someone's saying.
A lot of people realized how much listening effort they have to put in every day and didn't realize how much they relied on visual cues until March 2020, when the world started to wear masks because this part of our face went away. People went, oh my gosh, my hearing is so much worse than I expected, or I'm struggling a lot more. I can't figure out why. We've removed this very crucial piece that helps us to fill in those gaps. And as soon as you don't have that, it's challenging.
And then there were these plexiglass barriers in between you and the checkout person. You could have normal hearing. You're wearing a mask. They're wearing a mask. There's a piece of plexiglass between you. You can't speech read. Some pitches, frequencies are not coming through. Maybe the high pitches are small enough that they kind of squeak their way around, but the low pitches got blocked. Now you don't hear the mumble, but you hear the other. And it's just understanding hearing is very complex. It's not you hear, you don't hear. It is what sounds hit your eardrum in the string of sounds that come through very rapidly with small gaps in between. You're supposed to know that was a word and that was a word and that was a word. It's exhausting to repeatedly say, what? And then which person gives up first? The person that has to repeat themselves or the person that says, I'm tired of saying what? That's where arguments come in. Yeah.
Hearing loss configuration comes in many different shapes and sizes. And this is just one example to hopefully give you at least enough information to be able to interpret your own audiogram in the future. When we look at your hearing, we're going to look at it in several different ways. So again, if we look over to this key and we see AC unmasked or AC and BC. AC is going to be air conduction. That is going to be when people are testing your hearing through headphones, whether that be the kind that goes over the ear and makes you look like a pilot, or the kind that go into your ear that are soft and squishy. Both of those are air conduction tests. BC is bone conduction. And so that's when we put that little headband on. It sits right behind your ear. And that's going to bypass your outer, which is your ear canal, and middle, which is your eardrum and middle ear space, and go directly to the cochlea, which is your sensory organ of hearing, and then further on the pathway. So looking at the graph here, when you see the brackets, That's going to be your bone conduction. And then the X's and the O's are your air conduction. When those line up, we're going to call it a sensory neural hearing loss, meaning that your outer and middle ear components are all normal or not interfering and causing a gap between your sensory organ of hearing and testing it through headphones.
And that's the most common type.
Absolutely. That's for 99% of people going to be the permanent type of hearing loss.
Even though it sounds really bad, that is the typical type of hearing disorder that we see, a sensory neural hearing loss.
Yep.
It's at the nerve level. Yeah.
So when there is a gap, if we had the brackets much higher on the graph, meaning you responded to the sounds through the headband at a much softer level than through headphones or earphones, that would mean a conductive hearing loss. That sound isn't being transferred the way that it should be through the outer or middle part of your ear. And if you bypass that, it's much better. So that would be like if you have fluid in your ears, that's a very common one that people think about.
Yes.
What's the number one thing that people call about that they think they need their hearing aids bumped up? Or they say, it's just, I feel like something's changed. What's usually the occurrence that would cause a conductive hearing loss?
Wax.
What? Earwax?
Earwax.
Talk about in the 90s, 95% of the time, if your hearing has changed, it's probably a temporary conductive hearing loss. You have a hearing loss, but then you put a hearing loss on top because something's blocked.
Mm-hmm.
Or people come back from vacations. They can't hear as well as they used to. They're all full of fluid. Conductive hearing losses are usually temporary. It adds on to what you already have. So if you have normal hearing, it's a conductive hearing loss. If you have normal hearing at the inner ear, if you have a hearing loss, sensory neural, and then you add that temporary part, now we call it mixed. And then there's some people that are born with that, what we call air bone gap. If we see a difference between your inner ear and your outer ear, we're going to make sure we send you to the next level. We're going to send you to a surgeon that's going to see if there's anything surgically that could be done to improve that.
Yep. Or sometimes it's a watch and wait. So if you look at your results and you see that you have a difference between your bone conduction and your air conduction, if it's fluid from like a traditional ear infection, sometimes that fluid clears up on its own. We just need our draining system to kick in. It drains, it goes away, and that air bone gap closes. So you may not need any intervention for that time, but if it lingers or if it's a bigger problem, which is why we'll refer you to an otolaryngologist, then they might have some different options for you to see what we can do to close that gap. Back to the testing, you're not only being tested with beeps, because believe it or not, we're not robots and we don't communicate with beep boop all day. Though some days I feel like maybe my brain does function that way.
Simpler that way.
Sometimes it's just one of those days you're like, I just think I'm hearing beeps today. But we look at speech. And speech is important because that's how we communicate. That's more simulated to real life than just softest sound you can hear.
Yeah, true.
So when we look at speech, the first way, most often, is going to be a speech reception threshold. So this is going to be repeating compound words back to us, like baseball, ice cream, hot dog, depending on how hungry I am, will depend on how many food words you get presented. And we will.
You know what I think of when I do that list? Like, imagine a 3-year-old's birthday party at a playground. We have ice cream, popcorn, paper airplanes or an airplane overhead. We have a cowboy that comes in. They have baseballs that are flying.
Outside at daybreak.
Daybreak. Anyway, I digress. They're easy children's words, 2 syllable.
Easy words.
It's not right or wrong. It's just how low can you go?
They're having trouble in conversation with TV and the like.
Mumblers having problems with certain people. Can't do it.
Yep.
Why?
The first one is going to be, let's find a threshold. What are words that you can repeat back that you're familiar with 50% of the time? So that's going to be down on the lower right speech audiometry portion under the SRT. That's what that means. Word recognition is going to be single syllable words at a consistent level. This could be presented at your most comfortable level or louder than that, depending on your personal preference. The key here is we want to make sure that you have good access to those sounds. We want to see, what does your brain do when audibility is not an issue? Meaning you can hear it, does your brain understand it? And this is where we tend to see people reference back to, oh, I have, 96% hearing in my right ear and 92% hearing in my left ear. Oh, not really.
Or we say it's 32%, it's 48%, and they're like, I don't feel like it's that bad. So let's go into what this test really is, why we do it, and how it's sometimes not fair, and other times we have to test several things to, again, try to piece together why you're struggling.
The big picture.
Yeah.
So word recognition is presented at an audible level, meaning that you have good access to the different parts of speech, and we want to see what your brain does with it. And this is going to be the man who says, say the word cat, say the word ball, and you just repeat back the last word that he says. This is going to be without context and no familiarization, which means that we are heavily relying on your brain to hear the individual speech sounds, put them all together, and formulate a common word. This is going to tell us if we make things loud enough, usually through the results of hearing aids, how much do we fully expect your brain to at least have some sort of understanding of speech and language? When this number is really good, in the 80s plus, that's great. Without context, no visual cues, no familiarization, your brain still has a pretty good ability to put together what words are being said. When it starts to get lower than that, like 32 to 48%, like Dr. Hyman just referenced, even when we make it loud enough that you can hear the individual speech sounds, it's still coming through a little bit distorted, and you're going to need other inputs like context, visual cues, written materials if you're going into a meeting so you have information prepared.
Right. Yeah, but it's not fair. It's not fair, right? It was like, say the word ball, say the word bat, say the word cat, say the word that, out of nowhere, no one just says a word and says it to you and then stands there and expects you to know exactly what they said, right? That's not the real world. It is a struggle for a lot of people, especially as their ears break. Maybe it was an autoimmune disorder. There was some kind of chemical change due to a medication. Something happened. And then we're like, look, we know it's bad, but watch this. What if we put two ears together? What if suddenly you could see that man's face? Oh my gosh, that's a game changer. What if we said, we're going to talk about a baseball game? And then you have an idea, all these words are about something. And then what if he actually said it in a sentence? What if he said it in a paragraph? You're going to be doing gangbusters great. But the key here is that she was saying it's at an audible level. We make it loud enough for you to hear the sounds. When you speak to normal people, they're not necessarily making their voice at a level that's enough for you because they have no idea how bad it is.
Right.
We look at people all the time and they walk in and we're like, you look like a regular Joe or Jane. When we see the audiogram, we go, oh. And if you bring someone with you to the appointment, which we usually recommend because whatever happens to you affects your significant other, your family and all that. But suddenly we're like, he can't hear you talk at this level. And they're like, what?
Right.
And we're like, no, we're looking. We know. Now we know. And we're telling you, bring up your voice. So this is where we're trying to figure out if it's this loud, how good is it? Then we put the hearing aids on and everybody else gets to talk at their normal level. And we have an idea, if you only get 32% in quiet in the sound booth, that might be as good as it gets if someone just starts talking out of nowhere. If we add in these other things, we know that could be better. So it's more than just, let's take this hearing test results, let's put it in an over-counter device, and you're just going to work with it. The audiologist is piecing us together for you and your family to create an ability to not only hear better, but to give you the strategies, because this seems simple, but all of this gives so much information to help you.
Absolutely. It's a puzzle. There are many pieces. They all go together. If we have 4 patients who come in with this exact same result, all 4 of them may report different levels of difficulty they're experiencing in their everyday life.
Yep. Absolutely. You and your life and your lifestyle depicts how successful you will be, or how our counseling will help you and give you strategies to meet your goals. So it's all about you and your goals. But right now, we first have to just find out, how bad is it? It's like being an accountant and someone's like, I'm afraid to show anyone my books. I think I'm going bankrupt. Well, if you don't open it up and be vulnerable, we can't help you. So this is why a lot of people are stressed to come into the office, to come into the booth, to have this done, because they don't want to know. But we're telling you it's going to be okay, and we're going to keep it private, but we need to know how bad it is so we can make your life easier, so you have less listening effort.
Absolutely. And I mean, Lindsay can attest to this. How many patients have come in, they've seen any one of us, they see her, and they're like, yeah, I wish I had done this sooner, or I didn't realize how bad it was until I got hearing aids.
Yep.
And Lindsay has these excellent relationships with a lot of these patients who have been here a long time with Dr. Hyman as well. And they're like, yeah, the next set is just better than the last. And I don't have a lot of patients who come in and say, yeah, wish I had waited 5 to 7 more years before I did this.
No, because it's not stagnant. Fortunately, unfortunately, they know Lindsay really well. Sometimes we see that hearing continue to decline, or there's some cognition that has changed as well. And so that next pair of hearing aids, because the other ones, they were used really well. They were loved. They were worn every single day for 8 years. And unfortunately, they're breaking. But that next pair, you might be a different person. You've evolved into someone who maybe did move to a different area. Things are noisier, or you need more cognitive resources to do the same job of just having a conversation with a loved one. Knowing all those nuances, all of us, we look at the audiogram or we look at the notes real quick and we go, okay, I know what to do. Especially Lindsay, she's like, oh, I feel like something's changed. We need to retest you. I can tell. This is harder than it used to be. We know who you are. And this wasn't you. We need to figure this out. We're always problem solving. That's all we do. Talk about a puzzle. This is good fun for us, though. We love
it really is
to be able to figure it out for you, because it's not black and white. I hear, I don't hear.
Absolutely.
So many layers to that onion.
Yeah. So we hope that you found this explanation of the audiogram and the results from your hearing test beneficial. There is absolutely no shame in reaching back out. If you're like, can you go through my personal one again, just to have a better understanding? Or, as Dr. Hyman mentioned before, that communication partner, that family member that maybe couldn't make your appointment. And they're like, I have some questions about the hearing test. We would be happy to go through that with them as well, so that everybody is on the same page, because it is your right as a patient and as a consumer to have a firm understanding of what your results mean. So if you're not sure, if you want to talk about it, go ahead and reach out to us. And if we are not your managing audiology team, go ahead and reach out to your managing audiology team and have them walk through your results with you, so that you can have a firm understanding of what is going on with your ears, your hearing, and your healthcare.
That's right.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Till next time.
Thank you so much for listening today. And we hope that you join us for previous episodes if you haven't heard them yet, or future episodes to never miss out on the information we are sharing. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Hearing Wellness Journey podcast. For more information about what we do and the services we provide, please visit our website at hearingwellnessjourney.com/podcast, where you can find more resources based on today's discussion, as well as request to be a member of our Hearing Wellness Journey community on Facebook. That's available for our listeners exclusively on hearingwellnessjourney.com/podcast.